Hello, welcome to A Dash of Therapy. I'm Dr. Samantha Bartram, a UK trained counselling psychologist and psychotherapist. Have you ever felt that no matter how much you do, it's never quite enough? Maybe you hold yourself to impossibly high standards and you hold others to them too. Maybe you struggle to give praise because in your mind, meeting the standard is just what's expected. You should just do that. Maybe you were raised in an environment where achievements weren't celebrated or noticed even. Only the shortcomings and the failures were pointed out or focused on. And so there's that little voice that whispers, you could have done better, you could have done more, and suddenly this idea of good enough feels like a standard no one, including you, can ever really achieve. So today I want to talk about when is it good enough and what it means to release ourselves and others from the grip of these unreasonably high standards without losing ambition or growth, because that's the fear, isn't it, that we won't be propelled to move forward. And the truth is, perfectionism isn't just about working hard, it's often about fear. And fear keeps us stuck and prevents us from growing. In fact, the research tells us that perfectionism isn't the same as striving for excellence. It's not this, noble trait that pushes us to be our best. Perfectionism is, in fact, the belief that we're never good enough and that our worth is tied to this flawless performance and it's not based on reality at all. Dr. Brené Brown, in fact, describes perfectionism as a shield. It's a way of protecting ourselves from shame, from judgment and failure. If I'm perfect, no one can criticise me. If others meet my high standards, they won't disappoint me and I won't disappoint others. But perfectionism doesn't actually lead to confidence. In fact, it tends to lead to anxiety, to burnout, and this kind of persistent sense of inadequacy, which, so it's quite damaging. And here's the catch. Perfectionists often achieve less, not more, because they either procrastinate out of fear or you keep redoing things instead of finishing them. And the bar keeps moving. Nothing ever feels good enough. And when we extend that to others, holding them to impossible expectations and high standards, it creates frustration, resentment, and puts a big strain on relationships, in fact. So if perfectionism is an illusion, what does good enough actually look like? Well, good enough isn't about kind of lowering the bar or the standards, so to speak. It's kind of about recognising when something meets a standard that truly matters, not an impossible kind of ever changing standard, but a realistic one. So, for example, here's a powerful question you could ask yourself. Would I say this was good enough if it was someone else's work? Often we can extend sort of grace to others when we don't with ourselves, or maybe we don't. Sometimes we've learned to judge others as harshly as we judge ourselves. If you find it hard to acknowledge when people, including yourself, have done well, ask, am I withholding recognition because I believe praise is only for the exceptional? So that's often something that might be there. Self-worth isn't performance-based metric. It doesn't rise and fall with productivity or success. You are worthy right now, exactly as you are. And if we can embrace that, we can stop measuring ourselves and others against impossible standards and actually start appreciating what is accomplished. A lot of people worry that if they lower their standards, and I hear this a lot in my practice, they'll stop growing. But self-compassion research, like that of Christian Neff, actually, Dr. Christian Neff, shows, in fact, the opposite is true. When we treat ourselves with kindness, we're more motivated, not less. When we know that mistakes don't define us, we take more risks, which is also wonderful, isn't it? When we trust that we are enough, we don't need to prove it constantly. Growth doesn't come from self-criticism. which makes sense really, doesn't it? It comes from curiosity, from trying, from learning, from making mistakes, in fact. So you can ask yourself, am I pushing myself and others out of love or out of fear? One leads to sustainable progress and the other leads to exhaustion and disconnection. So it's a good thing to reflect on. So let's talk about celebration as well, which is not some big extravagant thing, but a simple practice. What if, for example, instead of constantly moving the goalpost, you pause to acknowledge where you are right now? What if you let yourself feel proud of the effort, not just the outcome? How wonderful. What if you allowed yourself to acknowledge others too? What if doing a job well wasn't just expected, but recognised? And here are a few small things that you could do to practice that. There's this past you reflection. You could look back 6 months or a year. Would past you be proud of where you are today? Probably. And then let yourself feel that. You could keep a small wins journal. Each day write down one thing you did well, even if it's, I showed up. That's worth celebrating and acknowledging. And then there's the done list. Instead of focusing on what's left to do, write down all the things you've already accomplished. You might actually find yourself surprised at how much you have done. So turn it on its head. So if you're waiting for the day when you finally kind of feel enough, I want to tell you something. You don't have to wait. You already are. You are not your productivity. You are not a sum of achievements. Your worth is not this finish line, theoretical finish line that you have to reach, and neither is anyone else's. So let yourself breathe. Let yourself be human. And thank you for being here. So if this resonated with you, let me know in the comments what's one thing you're proud of today and what's one thing you can recognise in someone else. Thank you.